The dinner party was already in full swing when I arrived at my sister's house. Or rather what she called her house. The sprawling four-bedroom colonial in the prestigious Riverside Oaks development, with its marble countertops and crystal chandeliers, was indeed impressive. The house sat on a corner lot with mature oak trees and a circular driveway, the kind of place that made visitors slow down to admire it. My sister Victoria had been showing it off to the family for 3 years now, hosting elaborate dinner parties and posting endless photos on social media with captions about her successful life and perfect home. I'd been invited as always, with the understanding that I'd help serve and clean up afterward. It had become an unspoken arrangement over the years. I showed up early, helped in the kitchen, made sure everything ran smoothly, and Victoria got to play the perfect hostess while taking all the credit. She'd introduce me to her friends as my sister who helps out, never by name, never with any real acknowledgement of the hours I spent making her events successful. Tonight was a celebration for our parents' 40th anniversary. The dining room table was set for 12 with Victoria's expensive china, the kind she ordered from that boutique in the city. My mother sat at one end, my father at the other, and Victoria held court in the middle, recounting some story about her recent spa weekend. I'd spent the afternoon helping prepare the meal, chopping vegetables and setting the table while Victoria got her hair done. When I finally sat down, the only remaining seat was at the far end next to the kitchen door, close enough to jump up and grab whatever was needed. "Sarah, the wine needs refilling," Victoria said without looking at me. She held up her glass and I stood automatically reaching for the bottle on the sideboard. As I poured, my 11-year-old niece Mallory looked up at me with that expression children get when they're about to repeat something they've heard adults say, something they don't fully understand but know is meant to hurt. "Mom says you're nothing but the maid who cleans our house," Mallory announced to the table. Her voice carried that sing-song quality of childhood cruelty. "She says you're lucky we let you come to family dinners since you're basically just the cleaning lady around here." The conversation stopped. Forks paused midway to mouths. My brother-in-law David developed a sudden interest in his plate. My parents looked uncomfortable but said nothing, which was typical. Victoria didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. She just smirked into her wine glass, taking a slow sip. "Mallory, we don't say those things out loud, remember?" But her tone made it clear she wasn't actually correcting her daughter, just coaching her on when to be cruel openly versus when to be cruel quietly. I stood there with the wine bottle in my hand, watching my sister's satisfied expression. 3 years of this. 3 years of playing the role she'd assigned me, of being the failure sister who'd never quite measured up, who'd scraped by while Victoria married well and lived in luxury. I set the wine bottle down carefully. "Excuse me," I said quietly. I walked to the hall closet where I'd left my purse and coat. "Where are you going?" my mother called. "We haven't even had dessert yet." "I need to leave," I said, slipping on my coat. Victoria laughed, that light, dismissive laugh she'd perfected. So dramatic. Mallory was just being honest. "If you're going to be sensitive about your situation, maybe you shouldn't come to these things." I looked at her for a long moment. She sat there in her designer dress, in her beautiful dining room, surrounded by the family she'd gathered to celebrate herself. And she had no idea. None of them did. "You're right," I said. "I probably shouldn't." I left without another word, walking to my car while I could hear Victoria inside making some joke about me being too sensitive, about how some people just can't handle the truth about their station in life. The drive home took 20 minutes. I lived in a modest townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, nothing flashy or impressive. I'd chosen it specifically because it didn't draw attention. The last thing I wanted was questions about where my money came from or why I wasn't living in something more extravagant. Once inside, I made myself a cup of tea and opened my laptop. I navigated to my secure file storage and pulled up the folder labeled Riverside Oaks property. Inside were all the documents from the purchase 3 years ago. The title deed with my name clearly listed as sole owner, the mortgage paperwork showing I'd paid cash. No financing needed. The property tax records I'd been paying quarterly, the homeowner's insurance policy in my name. All of it was irrefutable proof of ownership. I'd bought the house in cash for $1.4 million using a portion of the proceeds from selling my medical supply company. Victoria had no idea. She thought the house belonged to David's parents, that they were letting her and David live there as a generous gift. That's what I'd told her through the real estate attorney who handled everything discreetly, setting up the arrangement through a property management LLC to keep my name off anything Victoria might see. In reality, Victoria and David had been my tenants for 3 years, paying $1,200 a month in what they thought was a contribution to the in-laws for property taxes and maintenance. They had no idea they were paying me, or that the actual market rent for a house like that was closer to $5,000 a month. I'd set it up this way deliberately after selling my company. I'd watched Victoria struggle for years, working retail jobs she considered beneath her, married to David who made decent money but nothing spectacular. When they'd complained about not being able to afford a nice house, not being able to give Mallory the life she deserved, I'd arranged for them to stay in David's parents' house, at a severely reduced rate. I'd done it because I thought maybe if Victoria felt secure, if she had the life she'd always wanted, she might finally stop treating me like I was less than her. Maybe the cruelty would stop if she didn't feel like she had to compete with me anymore. But it hadn't stopped. If anything, it had gotten worse. Having the house had just given her a stage to perform her superiority on, a backdrop for her endless commentary about my failures and her successes. I attached the property deed, the title insurance, and the lease agreement to an email. In the message field I typed, Victoria. Attached are the documents showing the actual ownership of the house at 847 Riverside Oaks Drive. You'll note that I purchased this property in my name 3 years ago. You and David have been my tenants, though I led you to believe otherwise. Effective immediately, I am terminating your lease agreement. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Regards, your cleaning lady, Sarah. I hit send at 8:47 in the evening. Then I forwarded copies to my real estate attorney, Marcus Chin, with instructions to prepare formal eviction paperwork. I texted him, need this processed first thing Monday morning. No delays. His response came within 5 minutes. We'll handle personally. I'll have the sheriff's office serve papers by Tuesday. I poured another cup of tea and waited. The first call came at 11:53. Victoria. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. By midnight I had 17 missed calls from her, 9 from David and 3 from my mother. The voicemails started apologetic. Sarah, there must be some mistake with these documents. Please call me back so we can clear this up. I'm sure there's a simple explanation. Then confused. I don't understand these documents. David's parents bought this house for us. There has to be an error in the county records or something. Maybe someone stole your identity? We need to figure this out together. Then desperate. Sarah, please. We need to talk about this. We can't just leave. Where would we go? Mallory's school is here. All her friends are here. This is our home. We've lived here for 3 years. Please just call me back and we can work something out. Then angry. This is insane. You can't just kick us out of our home like this. We have rights as tenants. I'm calling a lawyer first thing Monday morning. This is harassment and I won't stand for it. You're going to regret this. Then back to desperate. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about what Mallory said. She's just a child. She didn't understand what she was saying. Please don't punish her for something I said in private. Please. I'm begging you. I listened to each one calmly, sipping my tea, and deleted them. At 1 in the morning my mother called. I answered. Sarah, what is going on? Victoria is hysterical. She's saying you're evicting her. That's correct, I said. I own the house she's living in. I'm terminating the lease. You own it? How? Victoria said David's parents bought it for them. Victoria was misinformed. I bought it 3 years ago when I sold my company. I've been letting her and David live there at a significantly reduced rate. But I've decided I no longer want to be their landlord. Your company? What company? I smiled even though she couldn't see me. The medical supply company I started 8 years ago. We manufactured sterile surgical equipment. I sold it to a healthcare conglomerate for $47 million. After taxes and paying off investors, I cleared about $32 million. The house was a small purchase in comparison. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. You never told us, she finally said. You never asked. Everyone assumed I was still working as a medical receptionist because that's what I was doing when I started the company as a side project. I kept that job for 5 years while building the business. By the time I sold it, the assumption was so ingrained that I saw no reason to correct it. But Victoria, she talks about you like I'm the cleaning lady? Yes, I know. I've heard it for 3 years. Tonight her daughter repeated it at the dinner table, and Victoria found it amusing rather than horrifying. So I've decided I'm done subsidizing the lifestyle that allows her to feel superior to me. Sarah, she didn't mean. She meant exactly what she said, Mom. And now she can find somewhere else to say it. I hung up and turned off my phone. Monday morning, Marcus called me from his office. The paperwork is ready. Sheriff's deputy will serve it tomorrow morning at 8. I've also prepared a formal notice that their lease agreement is terminated due to your decision to reclaim the property for personal use. Perfectly legal. They have 30 days. Thank you, Marcus. I have to ask, Sarah. This is your sister. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. Tuesday morning, I turn my phone back on. 247 missed calls. 73 voicemails. Countless text messages. At 8:15, Marcus texted, "Papers served. Your sister's attorney called me already. I've informed him that everything is legal and proper. He's got nothing." I allowed myself a small smile. The family group chat, which I'd been removed from 3 years ago because Victoria said I didn't need to be involved in family planning since I never hosted anything, suddenly had me re-added. Messages flooded in. My cousin Jennifer, is it true you own Victoria's house? My Aunt Patricia, Victoria is saying you're making up documents? My brother Thomas, can someone explain what's happening? I typed one message. I purchased the property at 847 Riverside Oaks Drive 3 years ago for $1.4 million cash. Victoria and David have been my tenants at a reduced rate. I am reclaiming my property. Anyone with questions can contact my attorney, Marcus Chin at Chin & Associates. Then I muted the chat. Victoria's lawyer tried to fight it. He called Marcus claiming tenant rights, claiming unfair eviction, claiming Victoria had made improvements to the property that gave her equity. Marcus shut down each argument with documentation. Every repair had been approved and paid for by me through the property management company I'd hired. Every modification had been outlined in the lease agreement Victoria had signed without reading carefully, too excited about living in a free luxury house to examine the fine print. The 30 days crawled by. I received one letter from Victoria, delivered by certified mail. In it, she claimed this was all a misunderstanding, that she'd never meant to hurt me, that Mallory was just a child who didn't understand what she was saying. She begged me to reconsider. I didn't respond. On day 28, Victoria and David moved out. I drove by the house that evening and saw the moving truck in the driveway. Victoria stood on the lawn watching workers carry out furniture. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. She saw my car and walked toward it. I rolled down the window. "I hope you're happy," she said. Her eyes were red from crying. "You've destroyed my family. Mallory had to change schools. David's commute is now 90 minutes. We're living in a rental apartment that costs more than we were paying you in a neighborhood that's not even safe. You have David's income," I said calmly. "You'll figure it out. People do. Why are you doing this to me?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Because you called me your cleaning lady, Victoria. You let your daughter think I was less than you. And when I gave you everything you wanted, you used it as a platform to humiliate me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply taking back what was mine. I didn't mean it that way." "Yes, you did. You meant it exactly that way. And now you know what it feels like when the person you look down on turns out to be the person you depend on." I rolled up the window and drove away. A week later, I listed the property for sale. It sold in 3 days for $1.7 million. I never told my family what I did with the profit. Some things are better kept private. But I did buy myself a new house. Smaller than the Riverside Oaks property, but in an even better neighborhood. And I made sure everyone knew it was mine.